Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. If you're just getting started in recording, podcasting, streaming, or content creation, figuring out all the jargon and sorting through all the gear can be a real challenge. Let's take a look at one of the critical components in any audio chain, break down what it does, and look at some of the essential features. We're talking about an audio interface. And at its heart, an audio interface really does just one simple thing: route audio in and out of your computer or mobile device. But there are many aspects of this to consider, as we'll see in just a moment. A common question is, why not just use the computer's built-in microphone and speakers or headphone jack? Now, there are two reasons for this. The first is audio quality. The onboard microphones, speakers, and headphone jacks in a computer are simply not designed for maximum audio quality. They're designed to be functional at a certain price point. Second, those onboard audio capabilities are severely limited. For recording music and for broadcasting, streaming, or podcasting, we need more versatility and much more control. An audio interface is definitely the way to go if you want great sound quality. So let's take a look at some of the characteristics of an audio interface. The primary function of an audio interface, as I mentioned, is to get sound in and out of your computer or other device. An audio interface does this using what are called analog to digital converters on the inputs and digital to analog converters on the output. Basically, sound travels through the air as sound waves. It's picked up and transmitted by microphones or pickups as analog voltages. The converters in the audio interface change that analog voltage into digital ones and zeros that the computer can understand. And then the process is reversed when you play audio back through the interface. The digital ones and zeros are converted to analog and then into sound waves. Now, all of this takes place in the background, so you really don't have to worry about it. But it is the primary function of the audio interface. But out here in the real world, all you have to do is feed the sound in and hook it up to speakers or headphones to get to work. Now, these days, audio interfaces all offer great sounding converters, so you really don't have to worry about sound quality. But you do want to make sure your audio interface supports 24-bit conversion at least 44.1 kHz sample rate, or an even higher sample rate, such as 96 kHz or 192 kHz might be even better. This bit and sample rate determine the accuracy of the analog to digital and the digital to analog conversion. An important consideration when you're looking at an interface is its connection format to your computer. These days, various flavors of USB and Thunderbolt are the most common formats, but there are several versions of each, and there are other formats out there as well, such as AVB, FireWire, and more. Choose the audio interface with the format that matches your computer. Next, you should look at the input and output connections on the audio interface and the number of channels. The input connections allow you to get signals into the audio interface, and examples include microphone inputs, obviously for microphones, and you want to ensure that the interface has 48-volt phantom power for use with condenser microphones. You may also need line-level inputs for keyboards, mixers, and other audio gear, instrument inputs for guitars and basses, and digital inputs which can allow for expanding the interface with additional gear. For output connections, you'll commonly see line-level outputs for routing to external audio processors, as well as monitor outputs for hooking up studio speakers, headphone outputs for feeding headphones and earbuds, and digital outputs for routing to digital gear. Now, you may not need all these types of connections. At the most basic, you'll probably want to be able to get a microphone into the interface, as well as a guitar and a bass, or maybe a keyboard. The number of channels you need depends on how many sources you need to record at once. If you'll only ever use your voice for a podcast, then a single input may cover you. If you're recording a band playing live, you'll need lots of inputs to cover all the instruments and vocalists. Keep in mind that if your audio interface offers a digital input, you can use that to expand the number of microphone and line inputs in many cases. Likewise, the output connection array you need will depend on what you're doing. At a minimum, you'll want stereo monitor outputs for speakers and at least one headphone output. More line outputs give you greater versatility for routing signals, but that may or may not be necessary depending on what you're doing. Additional headphone outputs are very useful if you're working with another musician or if you're doing an in-person interview. A word that you may see come up with audio interfaces is latency. Latency is the time it takes to get the signal into the interface, route it into your computer, and send it back out to headphones or speakers. And we're talking about just a few milliseconds in most cases, but believe it or not, this can be quite noticeable. It can almost sound like an echo in some cases. So most interfaces provide a means of controlling this latency. This might be a knob on the front panel that allows for direct monitoring without latency, digital signal processing inside the interface, or other methods. Just ensure that the interface you choose allows you to record with zero or near zero latency. And just about any modern interface will have a way to do this. Speaking of built-in DSP or digital signal processing, some interfaces provide this as an additional feature. It can be used for onboard mixing of signals, for adding effects, for various types of processing, and more. It's a great feature, but may or may not be essential for what you're doing. Another feature that may or may not matter to you are MIDI inputs and outputs. These are connections that allow you to remote control external MIDI devices such as keyboards, hardware effects, lighting consoles, and more. Some audio interfaces provide these MIDI connections as a convenience, but there are also dedicated standalone MIDI interfaces available if you find you need MIDI connections later and your interface doesn't have them. There you have it, a quick rundown of some of the essentials of an audio interface. If you're looking for an interface, there are many options out there. I recommend making a list of your needs, then narrowing down your search by finding interfaces that match your needs. A great idea is consulting with your Sweetwater sales engineer, who can be a huge help when you're choosing an audio interface, since they're familiar with all the options and features and can help guide you to the best choice. You can also explore audio interfaces at Sweetwater.com. You'll find lots of great possibilities and information there. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Click here for more videos like this, or start at Sweetwater.com for all your music instrument and pro audio needs.